Hey, hi, it's me, Phoenix, and today I am with HHREC podcast with Gaylon Logan. Gaylon, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much.
You're very welcome. Please introduce yourself. Tell us a little about you.
Well, my name is Gaylon Logan Jr., and I am a father. I'm a husband. I have 10 grandchildren,
Oh, my goodness.
and it saved my life to take on the role of father.
Yes.
Yeah, and currently I'm the CEO of Village Connect, an agency, a nonprofit agency that I founded back in 2009, and this is my second nonprofit. My first nonprofit was in San Francisco, in the community that I grew up in, Hunters Point.
All right,
In
HB.
San Francisco, HP.
Hey, now.
And I spent the majority of my teenage years incarcerated, which I'll sort of share a little bit more about later.
Okay,
But that was sort of
wonderful.
part of my foundation. But my initial foundation was in Phoenix, Arizona, which is where I was born and raised the first 8 years of my life. I lived
Okay.
with my grandparents. And so I owe a whole lot of people
Yeah.
for being able to be in this seat today and speak to you.
Wonderful, right here, right now. Give me a little bit more about how your grandchildren saved your life.
Well, it started with my children
Okay, yeah.
because I had one foot in and one foot out of the streets.
Mm-hmm.
As I mentioned, I spent the majority of my teenage years incarcerated, and I was quite lost.
Yeah.
I was quite angry, and I was suffering from a lot of trauma that I didn't know what it was.
Mm.
And so the birth of my son in 1986 provided me with an opportunity to look at myself differently, to look at the world. And I clearly got a message that this was another chance to get it right. And at that point, I had an opportunity to either embrace fatherhood and family and what that meant, or to attempt to straddle the fence and do both. And so I soon learned that I couldn't do both, and I had to make a choice. And when I made that choice, I do believe that it saved my life.
Absolutely. It's wonderful that you were open enough to receive that sign to save your life. Like you were like, okay, one thing or the other, and you chose the proper one. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Thank you.
absolutely. I'm proud of you. Well, let's move forward. Please tell me about your community-based learning, CBL.
CBL, I was invited to become a part of the CBL family last December, as a matter of fact, a little bit over a year. And it started out with providing training for CBL, culture-based training, and so which I did and began offering trainings. And then I pitched the idea of creating a regular series that would address the issues affecting our community when it comes to the mass incarceration.
Okay, so who would you say this class is for primarily?
Well, in terms of, just giving props to CBL, and community-based learning trainings have been put on by Alameda County Behavioral Health Care Services. And it's designed for system partners, faith-based communities, and nonprofit organizations. And it's centered around improving health outcomes for consumers and family members in this area of mental health and substance use disorders. And so Returning Citizen series focuses on incarceration and the impact on our community and the mental health.
Yeah. Thank you. We absolutely need that. Now, what is the scheduling like for this class? How does that work?
They started out monthly,
Okay.
and so now, unfortunately, due to budget cuts, they're every other month now.
Okay.
But we generally hold a session, virtual session, every other month on the Zoom platform. At which time we offer up system-impacted experts to sit on the panel. And generally, the audience members consist of service providers, folks who work with that population,
Yes.
as well as community members who can relate to the topics that we put out. There's a different topic at each series.
Okay, and it makes sense to have someone who can relate and has been through it and can actually talk from a place of experience. Wonderful. Now, how does this class in a whole make an impact, you think? Like, what is the takeaway?
Well, I when I think of takeaways, I often I will always look at what they saying,
Mhm, mhm.
not what I think.
Right, what did they receive?
Exactly,
Yeah,
because
okay.
I have an intention anytime I do something,
Yeah.
but when it comes to what the actual outcome is, I really wait for them to tell me. And so what we've heard so far is that folks really have felt empowered
Mm,
by hearing authentic testimony, as well as having, because we always charge our panelists with giving strategies, with
yeah.
giving tips on how you can support somebody in that position or to heal yourself.
Yes,
And so
yes.
folks have walked away and they've stated that they've walked away with tangible tools that they've applied immediately.
That's what we like to hear. You can tell us one thing, but if you help us with how to do it, how to make it tangible, we can relate it and move it forward in our lifestyle.
Absolutely.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. All right, let's move forward again. Galen, you said you went through a few things growing up. Tell us about your past, your childhood. What was going on with you?
Oh, wait.
Tell me about it.
It's a whole lot. We got time?
Come on, ooh, I got all the time in the
Yeah.
world.
Well, I mentioned earlier that the first 8 years
Okay.
of my life I spent in Phoenix, Arizona,
Yes, yes.
being raised by my grandparents. And
Mm-hmm.
so that was foundational
Mm-hmm.
for me to be able to be here today. And I mentioned that my children saved my life, but also what supported that was that foundation
Your grandparents.
with my grandparents.
Absolutely.
And so I liken it to, I often share in my trainings and workshops that, between that age of 0 and 8,
Mhm.
there's this thing I like to refer to as the light switch.
Okay.
And the light switch is sort of like an aha moment for a child when you realize that somebody loves me, when you
Ah,
realize that I am loved.
yes.
And I believe that it's sort of, and I refer to it as a light switch because I believe that once you have that realization that there's a light that appears within you,
Mhm.
and it begins to permeate yourself.
Yes.
And at that point, it's kind of like this motion of I can exhale now. I can exhale, and I can go.
A double entendre. Excel,
Somebody loves me.
exhale. Yeah.
And guess what? You don't have to worry about it for the rest of your life.
Of your entire life.
Yeah.
Because love does not die.
No.
It doesn't die. It transforms, it transmutates, it goes with you till the very end. Yes.
So I got that, Phoenix. I got that. And
Yeah.
I didn't realize till years later that I got it when I
Mhm.
began to, sort of look at my peers, look at the folks that I was running with. And in doing this work, you can actually, in some cases, look in people's eyes and you could tell.
That's exactly where you need to look to tell.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Through the eyes, through the soul. You can feel it.
You can feel it.
Yeah. If you don't mind me asking, you don't have to answer this question. How did you end up with your grandparents?
I refer now to folks that I work with that are still out there,
Mhm.
that they're doing research.
Okay.
And they were doing research.
They were doing
They were
research.
doing research. They
Exactly.
were out there doing,
Doing what they had to
studies.
do because they had to do it for you to be who you are now.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right.
If they hadn't done that, you would not be sitting right here impacting lives the way that you are.
That's right.
So we're grateful for their research.
I
Thank you.
am too.
Yeah.
Yeah, I am too.
Thank you. I love that. They were doing research. Okay, now moving forward, you are a school advisor. You go into different schools and you speak to children who have kind of walked the same path that you have. What did you learn during this line of work? How did you even get involved?
Yeah, I got a job in 1989, and the title was an elementary school student advisor.
Okay.
And just to give you the backdrop of how that happened, my son was born in 1986, and I married his mom. And that's where I had made mention of making that choice.
Yes.
Of committing myself to family, and that's what motivated me to marry her and say, we're just going to get married and start a family. A year later, my daughter was born, and my sister was out doing research.
Okay.
And her son was about to be placed in the system, in the foster care system. And I just, within me, I couldn't let that happen. And so I went to my wife, and she didn't agree, but we
Children
went back
don't
and
recover
forth.
from that, though. So it's great that you got him.
I got him. He was 10 years old.
Yeah.
And at the time, I was working at Chevron as a computer operator. I was working on mainframe computers, but I was still dibbing and dabbing in the streets. But I went through a training program and got those skills, and so the Chevron where I worked was close to 50 miles away. And so Chevron was very strict on being on time. And so they fired me. And so it just so happens that I was able to get custody of my nephew right after I got fired.
Perfect timing. Divine order.
And you know my wife wasn't happy about that, right?
It's fine. She get over it.
Yeah, it was like, oh, now we got a new mouth to feed, and you lost your job.
Yeah, it's okay, though. But if you hadn't had your job before, you wouldn't have gotten a child. So, right? Because then you have to have a job to get the child to stay with you. Yeah.
That's right.
So it did its purpose. It was like, you got the baby? Go ahead.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right.
Now move on to the next.
So I went to enroll him in school.
Okay.
In an elementary school that was not far from where we lived in Hunters Point.
Mm-hmm.
And it was actually the beginning of the school year, so it was perfect timing. Everything was perfect. And I was told by the secretary that there was a new principal who had come in from the suburbs. And, the first thing came to mind, well, why would this guy want to come out of here and come work at this school? Because most of the students were bused from Hunters Point.
I see.
And so I asked her, could I talk to the principal? And she said, let me go ask him. And so she went into his office and she said, go on in. And what I thought would be like a 10-minute conversation turned into about an hour and a half.
A life changer.
And it was a life changer.
Yes.
And he began to ask me questions about my life, my background, and I was honest with him. And I told him, I said, man, I've been in trouble with the law and, and this is who I am. And he offered me a job.
I love it.
Yeah.
I love it. I love it. You just got to speak your truth.
Yeah.
And walk in it, and the rest will follow.
And so elementary school student advisor, that position came around because there was a lawsuit that NAACP sued the San Francisco Unified School District in regards to discrimination in their policies in the schools and so on and so forth. And so they allocated the money to create these positions to hire people like me to come in and work in the schools.
Okay.
However, the job title was very vague. It was something like, create programs that will foster a greater appreciation for education for students.
Yeah, that was my next question. Like, how did you support the kids in the elementary school? What exactly did you do?
Well, I'll tell you what they wanted to use me to do.
Okay.
And that was to be what they say, send all the bad kids to him.
Yes, a little bit kind of like detention.
Babysitter.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Yard monitor.
Mm-hmm.
Make sure kids not, killing each other.
Yeah.
When the kid acts up, come get him, take him out of the class. And I grew weary of that after a while because I felt like, well, this is not really making a difference.
Yeah, no impact.
So I went to the principal one day and I said, hey, look, here's my job description. It really is not very clear. And I know what I'm being used for. And it just doesn't seem like I'm a Band-Aid more than anything.
Mm-hmm.
And he said, hey, well, what do you think? What do you think we should do? And I set out to I started designing programs, and I created a group called the Get Fresh Crew. Back when Dougie Fresh was out.
Fresh.
The Get Fresh Crew. Yeah. So they all can relate to that.
Dougie Fresh, you're on.
And I was young. I was young at the time. I was like 22 at the time.
Baby.
So I was closer to them than anybody else in the school. And so I started creating, these little games and exercises. And most importantly, I created a space for them to talk.
Yeah.
And I would have them talk about what was happening in their lives, what was happening in the neighborhood and in the community.
A safe space.
A safe space for them to talk. And many of the stories that they would start telling, I mean, it just really spoke to the dysfunction in our communities, in our families. And mind you, this was right around the beginning of the crack epidemic.
Yes.
And
Okay.
so I would have kids come in and talk about, well, my mama was up all night and I don't know what was happening. And then had this guy and these guys coming in the house. I didn't know who they were. And I was scared. And so it created this platform. So it really became a sort of a healing place
Yes.
for the students to
Therapeutic.
come to. The students were bussed in. And so one of the things that I would do is I would make sure that I'm in front of the bus when the bus showed up. And I would make it a point to high five or touch. My whole thing was touch them. Touch them when they get off that bus.
Yes.
And
Connection.
it was a connection. And that was important, whether I knew it or not. See, I started doing a lot of things. I didn't know what those were.
Mm-hmm. You did it instinctually.
I did it instinctually.
Yeah.
And what I started thinking about was when I began to think about developing programming, what would have made a difference for me?
What did you come up with?
That.
Oh, I see what you're saying.
Touch them.
Touch them.
Touch
Yes.
'em.
Yes.
Talk to
Touch and
'em.
agree. Yeah.
Give them a space
Exactly.
that they can say what's going on and what's
Yeah.
on their mind.
Mm-hmm. A safe space where they feel comfortable and no one's going to judge them.
Nobody's
right?
gonna judge
Judgment-free
them.
zone.
That's right.
Mm-hmm.
That's right.
Mm-hmm. We needed that.
So one of the programs that took me out of that school I created was called the Academic Olympics.
Okay.
And it was a combination of athletics and academics. And I enlisted the support of the San Francisco Department of Public Health, the San Francisco Parks and Recreation Department, and City College of San Francisco to partner in the activities and the games. And so it was hugely successful. The students ate it up. The parents ate it up. And a mentor of mine who was working at the school at the time, his name was Leroy Gilliard. We call him Mr. G.
Mr. G.
He's a Tuskegee Airman
Oh, wow.
from Brooklyn, New York. And he became my mentor when I started working there. And he came up to me, because we did it like 2 years in a row, and he came up to me one day and he said, "It's time for you to leave." And I did not understand what he was saying. Why would I leave now? Everything's going good. I'm successful. And, and the next thing I know, I started getting a lot of flack from the teachers. They started complaining about everything. They started nitpicking. And then I came back to him and he was like, "Well, that's what I've been telling you. You're making people look bad." And I didn't understand that. You're making people look bad. How is this young 22-year-old kid coming in here and he's doing what you guys can't do?
You can't even fathom.
Yeah.
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 Yeah. That makes sense.
So eventually I left. I got recruited. There was a number of nonprofits that were kind of, knocking at my door and wanted to see if I was interested in working for them. And I eventually went to work for one of them.
Is that how you started your first consulting agency?
No.
Okay.
That's how I started my first nonprofit.
Copy that.
Because I began to see, and so I liken it to Mr. G helped me understand the politics of the work. I didn't understand that. And when I went to work for the nonprofit, I saw another level of it. I saw how I was being, used, but yet they didn't want to pay me. And so I began a process of learning everything I could about how their nonprofit functioned. And then I left. I quit and I went to start my own nonprofit. And that was the beginning of Infusion One, which was the name of my first agency. Infusion One.
I love the titles of everything that you do.
Thank you. Thank you.
Absolutely. Infusion One. Tell me a little bit about Infusion One.
Infusion One. One of my number one programs was the Academic Olympics.
Yes.
Because it was so successful. And at one point, we were in about 6 schools in San Francisco. Running the program. And then I got a letter of cease and desist from the Olympic Committee.
Of course you did.
Yeah.
Of course you did. They always try to halt you. That means you're doing something right.
Yeah. I was so proud.
You should be proud.
I was so proud.
Yeah. They noticed.
Yeah.
That means you're making an impact.
I couldn't believe it. They took the time to send me.
Dear Gaylon Logan, please stop.
Please stop.
You did it right. You did exactly what you were supposed to, and you kept going.
So I created another program called the Youth Leadership Development Program, where we focus on teaching children public speaking, research and development, how to research.
Good.
Civic and voter education, Wanted to teach them about how politics work, how to get a speed bump in your neighborhood if you need to. Would take them down to City Hall and they would make presentations. They would listen to the legislative process. And so there was I always seem to come up with these little pledges and phrases. So what we used was 3 R's. 3 R's of your life: respect, responsibility, and reality.
Gosh, I love alliteration. So yes,
that was our tagline:
responsibility and reality.
That's right. That's
right.
Those
are important.
Yes.
R cubed.
Yep. Yep. So ran Infusion One for about 10 years, and I burned out. And, what happened was, I like to share with folks, when I first started my nonprofit, I was spending about 98% of my time directly with the students and their families. So I was in the groups, I was out in the field and engaging them. 10 years later, it was the total opposite. And I was spending about 98% of my time in meetings at City Hall with funders and with other organizations. And I started losing my passion.
That makes sense.
We had an after-school program at our site, and I remember one day, and this was sort of the kicker. I came in the office one day, and I was going in my office, and I heard one of the kids asking one of the counselors, who is that?
Oh, they need to know exactly who you are.
They didn't know who I was.
You weren't present.
He didn't know who I was.
Yeah.
And I walked in my office, and I kid you not, I shed tears. I was like, this is not what I signed up for. It's not feeding me. It wasn't feeding me.
Yeah.
To be in all those meetings with people, and not to be negative, but I was in meetings a lot of times with people who didn't understand and quite frankly didn't care.
About the soul work that you had been doing.
Well, about the people, about the kids. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, and you were like, it's time to go. So tell me about Village Connect.
Village Connect is Infusion 1.2.
Infusion 1.2. Let's go. Tell me.
Yeah, 2.0 or
I liked it. 1.2.
Yeah, 1.2, whatever. Yeah. I ran into a student that was in one of my programs once in Infusion One, and I remember this young lady because she just, how somebody will come in and they'll take to what you're offering and they'll just eat it up and they just become the best. They become your spokesperson. They can recite everything that you've taught them. And this young lady was like that. And then one day she abruptly quit. And she just said, I'm not going to be in it anymore. And we tried to, what's wrong? What can we do? Can we offer you transportation? Can we help you get your tutoring? And she never told us. And I ran into her one day. This was prior to me starting Village Connect. And she told me, she said, I used to go home and I would have to fight with my family because I would come home and I attempt to tell them what I learned. And I attempted to tell them about what I experienced. And they reacted to me like I did something wrong. And it got to a point where, they started talking about her, and saying, you think you smart, you think you this, and you think you that. And I realized in that moment, it's like, wow, we actually set kids up when we just pick them out of the family and we pour into them and we build them, but there's nothing happening at home.
I see. Yes.
And it becomes competitive. And I couldn't fathom it. I just didn't understand because I would think, well, your parents would want you to.
You would think.
To be learning and growing. And you would think that. But if they're not growing.
Exactly.
If they're not learning.
And that's what their parents taught them. So it's definitely passed down through generations. Yeah, I was speaking to my cousin once upon a time, and you know how you'd come home and be like, my friends did this, or your uncles would chastise you. You don't have any friends.
Right.
And she was like, that hurt my feelings to the core for just, joking, but saying you don't have any friends. A lot of your trauma does come from the people you love most.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right.
Yeah. And if that connection is vague, then you're going to be stuck.
You're going to be stuck. And I felt like we put her in a position to have to choose.
Without knowing.
Without knowing.
Inadvertently,
Without
for
knowing.
sure.
You got to choose, this over your family. You got to start looking at there's something wrong with them or there's something wrong with you. And so prior to starting Village Connect, about 2 years before I actually formed the agency, I began having focus groups with a lot of people that I knew. These people that were in jail before, doctors. I had some folks that worked in education, and I just started having conversations with them. And the base of my questioning was just really centered around what does it actually take to create or develop an actualized adult from childhood? What does that take? What does that require? And we talked about a year and a half. And we just went back and forth and back and forth. And finally, at the end of it, it was family.
Yeah.
It was family. It was like, and whether it's blood or not, just whatever that incubator is that a child grows up in.
Exactly.
If you can strengthen that, if you can infuse, values and principles within that incubator, within that body, then that gives that child a much greater chance of succeeding
once
and
they
growing.
Come out of that incubator.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. Because we're preparing them for the world, and the world will eat you up if you don't have that base.
If you don't have that foundation, it will swallow you. Absolutely, and that is where it starts. The family at home, wherever home is. Yeah. Very cool. So that was Village Connect. Before Village Connect or after?
That was before Village Connect.
And that brought you to?
That brought me to Village Connect. And I formed Village Connect in 2009. Okay. So I started those conversations around 2007. And just really, it gave me the notion.
Okay.
Because I knew that I had to get back on the horse. Because once I left Infusion One, I took a year off.
Okay.
I was fortunate enough, I was blessed and had the wherewithal and the resources to say, I just need a break because I was burnt out. I was totally out of it. And during that year, one thing that was pivotal, I took a mindfulness course.
Tell me more.
Ooh, good Lord. Good Lord. It ate me up.
That's its purpose.
It got me. It just really reinforces that whole notion that the universe is always, guiding us.
It wants you to win.
It wants us to win. And so
that's the full purpose. It wants you to win. It wants you to heal. We get in our own way.
We get in our way. And I realized that I went into Infusion One wounded. And the work, helped me to heal in certain areas, but I wasn't totally healed. And I still had some work to do. And I'm still working to this day.
I should hope so. Yeah. It's a learning process every single day. Yeah, you need to keep working, keep learning. Now, what is Village Connect's mission once you finally got to it?
Village Connect's mission is to build the capacity of people to become more self-aware and self-directed, resulting in sustainable, positive transformation.
Can you say that one more time for the people in the back, please?
Village Connect's mission is to build the capacity of people to become more self-aware and self-directed, resulting in sustainable, positive transformation.
Oh, I just love that so very much. My goodness. Now, who is this directed towards? Families, the child, or just a whole cohesive collective?
I'm glad you asked that question. It's directed to human beings.
Ha! I love that.
Because it's applicable to all human beings.
Everyone, everywhere, all walks of life.
And quite often people will start, when I share our mission, they'll start asking, well, what does that really mean? And so a lot of people will gear towards capacity. Well, what kind of capacity are you talking about? And the way that we look at capacity is consciousness. And that when we raise our consciousness, our life changes. Everything changes. The way we look at things, the way we live.
Respond.
So raising the capacity of myself. And so our mission directs us in our programming to direct people back in. Look within, that there's answers within, and so instead of like saying, I'm aspire to go to Harvard, inspire to go into you.
Yeah.
And you'll be surprised what you discover.
Yeah, exactly.
Yes.
You will have all that you desire if you go inside, tap in, heal what's broken.
And to add to that whole aspect of self-directed. Yeah. So the conditioning that we receive in this country is that most of what's valuable is external.
Very true.
It's external.
Mm-hmm.
And you got to go out there and get it. You got to go to that school to get it. You got to go over here to get it. You got to go get that job to get it. And so the more that we begin to grow in our understanding of ourselves and the makeup of our humanness, the more likely that we will rely on our cues from within as opposed to without. And so that's where that self-directed comes from. We become more self-directed. One of the things that I talk about this a lot, and we have school-based services. The narrative that we get is that when our children are getting ready to go to school, you got to go out there and you got to go to that school and you got to get good grades so you can go to college. And then you go to college and you can get a good job and then you can become somebody.
You were somebody before you do
How about that? How about
you
that?
You don't have to become somebody by going out. You already are somebody within.
And if we don't know that,
you don't have it then. It has to be instilled. You have to learn it. It's very true.
And it goes back to that light switch.
Mm-hmm. It is definitely a light switch moment.
It goes back to the light switch that I believe when that light switch goes off, it builds resilience. It builds a level of trusting of self. Mm-hmm. I can trust myself. If I don't love myself, then I don't trust myself. If I don't trust myself, then I'm less likely to look within the powers that exist within me already.
Exactly. And then I'm influenced by the outside powers and I'm then left vulnerable.
Yes.
Yeah, absolutely. My goodness. So then that's where We Empower Family come in. Tell me about that program.
We Empower Family. I piloted We Empower Family before COVID. With the Oakland Promise program here in Oakland. And they had a program called Brilliant Babies.
Brilliant Babies.
Brilliant Babies. And so I was actually a consultant. I was a coach. I was a financial coach for Brilliant Babies. And I would provide coaching services for the clients that they work with, the families. And so I pitched it to them first. And so we did a cycle before COVID hit. And so We Empower Family is a 10-week coaching intensive. And what we focus on is social emotional learning. We focus on intergenerational trauma. We focus on goal setting and what SMART goals are. And in many cases, I think we take it for granted sometimes that, I just set a goal. People say, just set a goal and accomplish what you want to do. Well, there's a way to set goals and be successful at it.
Exactly.
And a lot of times, if we don't know how to set goals, in many cases, we have an intention, we have a desire to do something. And then when we keep failing, we stop trying.
It's a setup.
We just stop. It's like, well, I'm not good at that, so it must not have been meant for me. Where we introduce to the participants and walk them through this process of what SMART goals are, and then walk through and hold their hand around, set this one little goal and make it attainable, and then stretch yourself from there.
Exactly.
So it starts becoming, it starts becoming a norm for you.
Yeah, I like that.
Now, one other thing I'll say about We Empower Family is that our aim is not only to empower the individual and the family, but our intention is to build community. And so one aspect of that 10-week intensive is that we have weekly process calls. And so we have like a phone tree. And so each week you're assigned to call somebody and somebody's going to call you. And there's a dialogue, and we generally have, a few questions that we have them, answer. But prior to that, let me back up a second. This is through CBTC, our culture-based transformative coaching model, which I created 12 years ago. And we've had wide success in being able to reach people who have been told they can't be reached.
Yeah.
One of the things that we do at the beginning is people complete an assessment, a CBTC assessment. And from that assessment, we create what we call a personal manifesto. So everybody's equipped with a manifesto at the beginning of that 10 weeks. So, and I often tell people, it's like, once you complete that assessment, you've told me who you are.
Mm-hmm.
And so now the cat's out the bag. And so our job as coaches is to hold you accountable for who you say you are. This is who you are. Okay, cool. We're gonna treat you like that. We're gonna talk about that. We're gonna, show up like that's what's real. Yeah.
Yeah, I like that. I like that very much. That's one program. We empower family. Now tell me about Return to Black Wall Street.
Oh,
let me have it.
Return to Black Wall Street. We entered into a partnership with Repaired Nations.
Repaired Nations.
Extremely dynamic organization here in Oakland. And they approached us some years ago, and they wanted to come to our agency and conduct a worker cooperative training. And so we assembled a group of folks, and they did the training, and it was great, and they did it again. And I sat in on one of the trainings, and I got to speaking to one of the gentlemen after the second one. And I was like, you guys are giving them the nuts and bolts of how to develop a cooperative. And it's kind of like starting a business. We can give you the nuts and bolts of how to start a business. But what I see, you're not addressing the mindset in that I'm an employee now. You're going to tell me and teach me the fundamentals of how to start a business, but you're not teaching me the mindset that I need to maintain
yeah.
and go into. And so he was very open. He said, great, can you do it? And I said, yeah, we can do it. And so we integrated a mindset piece into it, which made a huge difference, because now we can not only give people the fundamentals of how to start a cooperative, but we can also give people the tools on how to go from an employee to an entrepreneur to a cooperative mindset, which are all three different mindsets. And so, and one of the questions that comes up sometimes, because we use the name Return to Black Wall Street, folks say, are you trying to, recreate what they did in Oklahoma?
That was my first question.
And it was like, no,
okay,
we're not.
Yeah.
But we're using that as a framework, because what we're attempting to do is we're attempting to recreate the mindset that created
to get to a place
like
Black Wall
like
Street.
that.
Okay,
exactly.
That makes sense.
Because we can never repeat that. I mean, that was.
Don't want to.
No.
It's a new day. Yeah. But it definitely took a mindset to even move forward into a collective. Yeah.
There was a cooperative and a collaborative mindset that created Tulsa, Oklahoma, that created what we now read about and the travesty that occurred as a people. Human beings were thriving, human beings were progressing, and then they get cut down.
In a night.
Yeah.
In one day.
In one day. And there's the mindset is what we're focusing on with Return to Black Wall Street.
Thank you for clearing that up.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Wonderful. Last program for this one is the African American Empowerment Program.
Yes. That's our school-based program.
Okay. So you're going around to different schools within San Francisco?
No, here in the East Bay.
Excuse me.
Yeah.
Going around to different schools within Oakland?
In Oakland, and actually, I'm sorry, we provided school-based services not only in Oakland but in Berkeley and in San Francisco.
Okay.
So we've been making our rounds over the years, but the school-based services is one of the first programs that we actually started when Village Connect was conceived and implemented. And so the African American Empower Project. We focus primarily on social emotional learning, again, with students, elementary school, middle school, and we focus on culture and identity. And so the cultural piece, I'm really proud of the fact that we are geared towards teaching children about Africans pre-slavery.
Yes.
And the history of Africa and the nations in Africa and
the royalty.
Mansa Musa,
Yes.
Imhotep,
Richest man in the world.
richest man in the world.
Mansa Musa, all his gold.
Yes,
And
yes.
he gave it away freely.
He gave away freely.
Yes.
He disrupted the economies of different countries when he walked in. And it's really still surprising to me sometime today, and I shouldn't be surprised how little African Americans know about the history of our people
Yes.
prior to slavery.
Done on purpose.
Done on purpose.
Yeah. Absolutely.
I can recall in my history classes growing up, and this is part of the reason why I really didn't like school, is I remember the history book and not being sort of a part of the history book until we got to that place where you got that picture of the slave ship.
That's it.
I remember that. I remember that vividly, like it was yesterday. I remember turning that page and seeing that slave ship, and then 2 pages go by, and then that's it. It's over.
Nothing. Nothing. Like whose history is that? Yeah.
But what it laid was a foundation of who I am.
Yeah.
And if I have a base and my foundation is that I'm a slave, when actually I strive to correct people a lot of times when we talk is they were not slaves. They were enslaved people.
They were kidnapped.
They were kidnapped.
Exactly.
They were victims.
Yeah, exactly.
But when we loosely keep referring to those were slaves, those were human beings. They had brothers, sisters, they had uncles, they had aunts, they had people who cried when they left.
Exactly. Yeah. They were forced into slavitude. One of those.
Yeah. I like that. Yeah.
They were forced into it. Yeah, so you have to change that mindset. You came from kings and queens. I love that. All right. Well, you seem to be a connector of the people, not just children, but people in general. How do you bring someone in who's off of the streets, or can you tell that they need a little bit of assistance? How do you reach out to them?
Well, I believe that to engage, to connect, you first have to be connected and engaged with yourself.
Yes.
And it goes back to that word capacity I spoke on earlier. If I am not connected and grounded within myself, then I don't have the capacity to make room for you.
Exactly.
So if you've ever encountered somebody when you go to talk to them or they come to talk to you and they keep talking and they don't stop to listen to you, they don't have the capacity to invite you in.
No, they absolutely do not.
And you don't feel it. You don't feel it. It's, an outreach worker that comes and outreach to you, but yet they don't ever stop and listen to you. That's not outreach.
That's not outreach, yes. And an outreach worker has to have gone through some things to gain perspective in order to be able to relate to you.
Absolutely.
So that makes perfect sense.
Yeah, so being grounded within yourself also.
So that's how you can approach people.
Another key piece is, and this is quite simple, but it's complicated. Having a natural curiosity, wanting to know.
I'm a habitual learner. I get that.
Desiring to know. I ask you a question. Am I curious enough to listen to your answer? Am I curious enough to seek a greater understanding? And then guess what? People respond to that.
Yeah.
You ever went and you start talking to somebody and you actually listen to them and then they stop for a second? Are you listening to me?
Really? Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I know exactly what you mean.
Is she really listening to me?
Are you listening?
Oh, she's listening.
She is. And that gives
okay.
you freedom to express even more. And now you're in a whole relationship. Mm-hmm.
Exactly.
Yeah, it definitely makes a difference. There was a question I wanted to ask you. Yes, wait, I was right there. You're cutting this and cutting and pasting. All right. Yes, exactly. So when you're out there being an outreach worker, what do you find is a tool that brings them to their aha light bulb moment? Have you seen that yet? Like anything consistent?
I think, I'll go back to what I just said. I think it's first and foremost acknowledging them, being present with them, because that validates them.
Okay.
And that makes the world of a difference, because once they feel validated, once they feel like they're heard,
Exactly.
then, okay, now you have my attention.
Yes.
You have my attention now. Now tell me what you want. Tell me what you want to tell me.
Yeah, people just want to be heard and listened to and related to. Okay, yeah, absolutely.
Exactly. And then the other aspect of being culturally competent is
Mm,
really understanding, where they're coming from, and you don't have to have been a dope fiend to understand a dope fiend.
exactly.
You just have to understand, what makes a dope fiend, and that somebody being a dope fiend does not necessarily tell you who they are.
Yes, it doesn't tell you much at all.
No.
Yeah, because a dope fiend has gone through the same process as an alcoholic, but they are not their issue. They just they got there somehow.
Exactly.
That makes, yeah, absolutely. So you're always connecting with kids and people, and you connect with them to a point where they have that, aha, I have a light within me. And that's how you build your relationships. What is the most satisfying moment of helping a kid or anybody who is struggling? What does that do for you?
Well, in our coaching model, we coach individuals, families, groups, community. My favorite by far is coaching families.
Okay.
When families trust enough to allow you to come into their space, into their home, and engage them. I tell you, each week, no kidding, I get at least 2-3 phone calls from mothers, from grandmothers. I want you to work with my son. I need you to talk to my son. I need you to talk to so-and-so. And, I hear it so much, but generally the first question I ask is, well, do they want to be talked to?
That is a very valid question.
Yeah.
Otherwise, it's just an intervention.
It's just an intervention.
Yeah.
And so it's very important, and I have to explain that to them. It's like, well, look, if this is not something that they have contributed in terms of they're looking for something, they're looking for someone to talk to, they're looking for some assistance, then we're trying to force something on them that they may not want. And I've done that before.
Yeah.
And what you want, man?
Exactly. What you doing
I ain't
here?
call you. My mama called you. I didn't call you.
People have to be willing.
But I had a case where I had a mother that called me, and she was telling me that her son was starting to do poorly in school, and starting to smoke weed and get into some stuff, and then I asked her again. I was like, well, is he asking for help? And she's like, well, no, I'm just concerned about my son, and I need some help for him. And that's where I suggested to her, I said, well, is it possible that we conduct a discovery session, not only with you and your son, but with anybody else who is coming in contact with him on a regular basis, his father, other siblings, family members.
The company you keep.
Yeah. So if you can assemble folks, I'd gladly come in and do a discovery session with you, and let's find out how we can support him. And so I had a case where I went in and did a discovery session, and and generally, as I talked about earlier about the assessment, finding out about what people's perceived life purpose is, what are their guiding principles. What are their core values? And the values is really important. What are your natural talents? But the values give me sort of a framework on how to forge a discussion. Because if Junior said these is his top 5 values, and you said this, and the sister said that, then okay, for me, I can put those together, and we can start doing some comparisons. And we can see where we're alike and where we're not alike. Yeah. And so I did that. And then we had another session. So she initiated an actual process where we had about 3 sessions. And in one of the sessions, I think it was the second to the last one, the young man got up and he said, Mama, I didn't even know you thought that way. And she said, I didn't know you thought that way. And the mother started crying, and he started crying, and I started crying.
Yeah.
Because it was just sort of like, quite often it's communication.
Yes, absolutely.
That really prevents that connectedness
And the breakthrough.
And the breakthrough.
It prevents it if you're not communicating.
And that was a huge breakthrough. You had to have been there to see it and feel it. But then, everybody in the house sort of, acknowledged, and their consciousness was raised to, here's what we can do. And so one of the things they walked away with is they developed a family set of core values. And they acknowledged where they were different, but they also acknowledged where they were alike. And I encouraged them to put it up on the wall. These are our family values in the living room.
I love that. Visible affirmations.
Visible affirmation.
Yeah.
And then also we get into the purpose work.
Okay.
What is your purpose? And you can have your own. That's you. That's your identity. But then what is our collective purpose as a family? What's this all about? What do we want? And I often encourage people to really think generationally.
Yeah, generational wealth, all of that. Health, generational health.
all that.
Yeah.
You guys are like the Golden State Warriors. What does winning a championship look like? And then what about your children and then your children's children? How do you set the pace for them now? So that that you are either breaking a chain of dysfunction and generational trauma, economics, we know the New Deal. That comes up a lot in my conversations with folks, just like, well, we poor. 17 cents to $1. That's the disparity between African Americans and whites.
Is it now?
For every dollar, we make 17 cents.
Wow, I was unaware of that.
It's incredible.
Yeah.
But then when you break that down, it's like, well, how did we get here? And if we don't understand history, we don't understand what happened, then we begin to internalize it as though something is wrong with us. Then black folks, boys, they just sorry.
Yeah, exactly. Oh, my people. Yeah, I understand that if you don't understand where it came from. Now, your discovery sessions, that leads you to the root of the issues, yes?
It gives me a framework.
Okay.
It gives me an understanding of, and let me just say this. This process doesn't work for everybody. And so that's also important. And the discovery session kind of brings that out as well.
Case by case basis.
Case by case. If you're not ready, people not ready, then you're setting people up to fail. And, I'm not trying to make people wrong for where you at.
Yeah. People don't change until they're ready to.
That's right.
Not in the moment before, and no one else can anticipate or initiate it. Yeah, that makes perfect sense. So the root of the issues, tell me about that. I'm looking here. What is that?
The root of the issue, I have to go back to the mission of Village Connect.
Okay.
To build the capacity of people to become more self-aware and self-directed, resulting in sustainable, positive transformation.
I love that.
When we are disconnected with ourselves, that's a mental illness. When I'm disconnected with who I am, when I'm disconnected with who I really am, it's a mental illness. What they say, fake it to make it. I'm just working off of ethers. I'm just going off of cues. I'm just looking for how I should be, what I should have, what I should wear, how much money I should have. You mentioned Africa when we talked before we got started, and I just recently went to Ghana.
Oh, nice.
Life-changing.
I took the words right out of my mouth.
Life-changing.
How long were you there?
About 3 weeks.
Yeah, okay.
And it wasn't a tourist trip.
Good.
It was immersive. So we were on a hot bus most of the time.
With the people.
We were in the villages, and the whole 9 yards. Went through a naming ceremony. I kind of made mention earlier. I went through a naming ceremony. So I was given the name Kwame Asaji-Fu.
Kwame Asaji-Fu. It's nice to see you.
Yes, thank you.
Yes.
And but I'll tell you my impression. The first, I'll say 6 hours of being in Ghana, I looked and turned to my wife and I said, damn, these people poor.
You can't tell them that.
Damn, these people poor. And I tell you, within 48 hours.
Richest people in the world.
Woo!
The spirit.
Say it again.
The richest people in the world, rich in spirit. And that's really all that matters. That's your most valuable asset is your spirit, knowledge of self.
The way they walk.
Purposefully.
Straight.
Regal. Yeah.
Back straight.
Mm-hmm.
Proud.
Yeah.
Confident.
Yeah.
Like,
That's beautiful.
what is this about? Good Lord.
We need that.
I was also taken aback by the presence of men.
Mm-hmm. Expound.
Men everywhere. Men participating in the community, in the village, in the process, in the family.
Present. Period. Yeah.
To think and reflect back to here where we're missing.
That was part of the process, though. Take the man out of the family, therefore you take the backbone out. And so now everyone's grasping, and they really have no foundation.
Yes.
So it's a whole, if the familial unit is broken, then we're weak.
Yes.
Yeah.
You said it. Mm-hmm. And so to your question of the root, that's the root.
There you go.
That's the root.
Thank you for that. We got there.
To build the capacity of people to become more self-aware and self-directed, resulting in sustainable, positive transformation.
Sustainable, positive transformation. You can transform and be like, I'm great, but can you sustain it?
Yes.
Yeah. I love that. I love to hear it. Let's keep moving. Okay. Back to Oakland. We went to Africa and now we are in Oakland. What are the main societal issues in Oakland today, right now? How long do I have, huh? What are the main societal issues in Oakland today in 2024?
We live in a system.
Like the Matrix.
The system produces what it produces. And we're seeing what the system produces.
Mm-hmm. It works, their system.
And it's not just in Oakland. It's not just in Oakland. It's everywhere. And so it's hard to single out Oakland and say that the problems that exist in Oakland are just Oakland problems, because they're not.
They're everyone's problems.
Yeah. Homelessness, lack of education, crime. It's everywhere.
Yeah, lack of resources.
And it's systemic. It's systemic. And so, to me, I always say, in order to change the system, you got to have a system
in place in order to change it.
You need a system to change the system.
You need a solution.
You need a solution that is thought out, and but it starts again. And I'm not going to repeat my mission again, but it just really speaks to if I know who I am. I was in a meeting once with I was the only Black person in the room, and I remember this guy. He was cool. But after the meeting, he pointed that out. He's like, what's different about you? What made a difference for you? And he asked me, what made it? And I told him, before I even thought about it, I know who I am.
Mm-hmm. Knowledge of self.
I know who I am.
Willpower. That's the most powerful thing in the world, is if we have knowledge of self.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And there was a point in my life, Phoenix, where I didn't know who I was. And when I speak back to my days of being a teenager and out in the streets and selling drugs.
Researching.
And I was researching. Mm-hmm. And I tell you, I was angry. And that's why I can understand the anger when I encounter it with young people, with adults. I understand where that anger comes from.
Been there.
I've been there.
Done that. Got the postcard.
So the whole thing is attempting to, and here's a key piece, and this came up in a training that I just left. How do you encourage a person to feel safe entering into introspection?
And you came up with?
Well, it was a group discussion, and a lot of folks, and much of what I said earlier to me is the key. And that is first acknowledging people's light. I see your light.
I see you.
I see some stuff. Mm-hmm. Ooh, it looks good.
It's there.
And there's some more in there too.
Yeah.
Don't you want to see it?
Yeah, because I see it in you.
I see it, but you got to see it.
Some don't even know it exists.
Many don't.
Yeah.
Many don't. To take somebody's life, it requires a lack of connection with yourself. You can't do it
because
otherwise.
you don't value life.
No.
Therefore, you don't value yours. So definitely the lack of connection. But where did it get severed? Did they come severed or was it taught?
Intergenerational trauma.
There we go.
It's passed on and
Exactly.
it's picked up.
Exactly.
And here's the kicker. It becomes normal.
It becomes part of who you are.
Yeah.
If you let it. Yeah, because it's hard to see another way if it's not in your face.
Mm-hmm.
It's easy to give in to pain and trauma. It's easier. And that creates fear, right? A lot of fear in the Black community. Can you touch base on that? Why are we fearful, do you think?
It makes me think of, again, this came up in this training I was just in.
Good training.
Or that I just taught. Abraham Maslow's hierarchy of needs.
Say that one more time.
Abraham Maslow, hierarchy of needs.
Okay. Expound.
And there's 5 stages, starting with, at the foundation, physiological needs. Food, water, air. We need that.
Yeah.
We need that. So if I don't have food, if I'm not eating, then you can't tell me nothing about none of that other stuff. You can't tell me nothing about behaving appropriately,
knowing thyself.
Knowing thyself, being a part of a process. The next level is safety. Safety and security. Health. Feeling safe around your environment, so on and so forth. If you don't feel safe, you're distracted. Yeah. So you got food, you get the food. I got the food now. I don't feel safe. It stops me from ascending into the other areas. The third level is love and belonging. The light switch. Did your switch go off as a kid? Did it not go off? And recognizing that. And then you move into self-esteem from there. I have esteem. I feel good about myself.
Yeah.
I'm valuable. And then lastly is self-actualization. Now I can play ball now. I got all my equipment. I got all the tools I need. Let me go out there and conquer the world.
Exactly. Start my own team.
Yeah. Yeah. And so we all have a relationship with all of these levels. And so the question becomes, where is somebody at? And sort of being able to assess that, but not only you assessing it in them being able to assess it within themselves. Where did I fall short? I want to read you this quote of Abraham Maslow, and this guy was German, right? He wasn't black.
Yeah. You sprechen Sie Deutsch?
Yeah. If I were a Negro, and he wrote this a while back when we was Negroes, right?
Okay, copy that.
If I were a Negro, I'd be fighting as Martin Luther King fought for human recognition and justice. I'd rather go down with my flag flying. If you're weak or crippled, or you can't speak out or fight back in some way, then people don't hesitate to treat you badly.
They don't hesitate. What is that?
They don't hesitate?
Yeah. Why are humans like that? They see someone they perceive as weaker or less than, and their first instinct is to treat them poorly.
I think it's part of nature. I think the preying. It's like, the African Serengeti. You got prey and then you got predators. The predators prey on those who they can prey on. The lion is going to think twice before trying to get an elephant, right?
That's true, but in nature, they only kill really primarily for survival.
True.
Humans kill for sport.
And that's you talk about now. You're talking about the sickness, the dark side of human beings.
Exactly.
And so that could be associated with slavery, chattel slavery, all kind of atrocities, entertainment,
video games.
Yeah,
it's all poured into our psyche.
Yeah,
deliberately.
But what I also say is that when this quote where he talks about weak or crippled, when I know that I'm getting trounced upon, when I know that I'm getting done unfairly, when I know that I'm being treated as a second-class citizen, And everybody else knows it. And I don't do anything. I don't do anything. That's weak. That's weak.
That's a detriment to yourself.
And it has become normalized to some degree. We have accepted it.
Mm-hmm.
The Black Panther Party here in Oakland.
Originated right here.
Going back to Abraham Maslow's hierarchy.
Mm-hmm.
What was the first thing they did? They started a breakfast program.
Yes.
To feed people.
With the women and children.
What else did they do? They took up guns.
To protect.
To protect.
Yeah, no, the food, no fear. Yes.
And the third level, love and belonging.
A place.
Come join us. Yeah. Get your leather jacket.
Yes.
Look
and your
cool.
beret.
Then you got what? Self-esteem.
Mm-hmm.
Now you have esteem. I'm black and I'm
is
proud.
Beautiful. Yes, yes. They were on the right path. And that's why they were worked on so hard to disassimilate. Yeah.
That's the answer to your question.
Boom. Thank you. Tell me the philosopher's name one more time.
Abraham Maslow, psychologist.
Thank you, psychologist.
And he created this hierarchy of needs.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Now, you did say Oakland's societal problem isn't just Oakland-based. It's all over the world. But why would you think it's here in Oakland so broad? Lack of community.
Yeah, all that.
Everything you've touched base on, basically. Yeah. And it's kind of centralized, I feel like.
Yeah, structural.
Precisely.
Structural. Where do black people live?
Yeah. Yes, exactly. Where are we?
Where are we?
Where are we being pushed to? Because then that brings us down to gentrification as well.
Is there a grocery store in your neighborhood?
Yeah, or a liquor store.
Yeah, or a liquor store, right.
Yeah.
How far do you have to go to get fruit and vegetables?
You can go 2 blocks to get a pint or a fifth of liquor, but to get some organic, anything fresh, it's all about accessibility.
Absolutely. Have you ever, I know you're a dance teacher. I've worked in Oakland schools.
Okay.
Deplorable.
Yes,
Deplorable.
I have yet to venture.
Deplorable.
Yeah.
Deplorable. There's no education happening. I'm sorry.
It's a prison, basically.
Yeah.
Yeah.
School to prison pipeline.
Exactly. It's preparation. Yeah, so it needs to start in the schools.
Needs to start at home.
Yes, okay.
Start at home. When we start talking about Mansa Musa and African civilizations and African greatness that's left out of the history books that are not taught to our children, when we start talking about systemic racism, when we start talking about the New Deal, if you're familiar with the New Deal,
Yeah, I am.
and that is where the majority of wealth was generated for white people. They got money to buy homes. They got money to go to college.
They did it on purpose.
And that creates generational wealth.
Exactly.
When you have those two things.
Yeah, they have a leg up.
You have a leg up. So, if we're not teaching that to our children at home, where are they going to learn it?
Nowhere. Because they're definitely not teaching it in schools.
Yeah.
Homeschool.
and when we teach history correctly, I know that there's a notion in the media. It's like that we're teaching hatred. It's not hatred.
Teaching awareness.
Yes.
Yeah. And they're actually trying to take it out of the school books, which is backwards. Yeah. No real taking responsibility for none of it. Okay. You've actually touched base on all my next questions. So moving forward, how are you networking, Moving forward, how are you networking and creating more cooperatives? What's your next move? What's next for you, Gaylon?
Oh, wait. That's a lot. Actually, I just turned 59.
Hallelujah.
Yeah,
Congratulations.
thank you.
Yeah, 59 looks good on you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
One notion that I have, well, not a notion, but an intention, is to work smarter, not harder. That's one.
Motto. Yeah.
I was taught by a mentor, once you understand, the best thing you can do is teach others and create a space for them. And so for me, I'm really looking to cultivate leadership. I'm really mindful of young people who have the energy and a desire to know the truth, to live in the truth, speak the truth,
walk it,
and make myself a servant to them. And so one of my next projects is I'm developing a training institute that's patterned after our coaching model, culture-based transformative coaching. And so
a training institute?
A training institute.
Okay.
Yes. Which will be focused on training folks in coaching, transformative coaching in this model.
Can I ask why you chose the word institute?
Because I want it to be larger than a school.
Okay.
I want it to be expansive. I want our reach to be global. I want the secrets to be told to the masses through the multitudes, so people can wake up. Because once people wake up,
it's a wrap.
And we talk about the system. Yeah. The system cannot defeat people.
No,
never has.
Never.
Yeah.
Yeah. Once we wake up, then we elevate and are unstoppable. People in general, just the human beings themselves. Yeah.
That's right.
Now you're creating a documentary?
We are.
Okay, yes. Tell me about this documentary. What's its main focus?
Ooh, I'm so excited. It's called Culture Connects Us.
Okay.
And as the name states, it's an examination of the culture we live in, and the culture that acts upon us, and the need to begin to re-envision the culture we want to live in.
Okay.
And that culture begins within us, and that there's a culture within you, and there's a culture within me. And that's part of everything that we've been talking about, is just sort of how do you take that first step around questioning, what is my purpose?
Yeah, you got to dig within.
Dig within. What are my guiding principles that support my purpose? What are my core values that serve as boundaries and as a fence to protect me in my pursuit of achieving that purpose? What are my natural talents?
Yes. What can I do naturally to give to the world? Something that I don't even have to reach for. It's already within you.
And we do a lot around visualization, around vision, creating a vision. But then also there's an emphasis around how do we cultivate an interdependent mindset where we begin to think and act and live interdependently, like the planet. The planet, the ecosystem, it just operates.
It's a well-oiled machine. It doesn't need any CEO, CFO, none of it.
Nope.
Yeah, and it just does it naturally. Nature.
That's right. So we're going to be rolling it out this year.
Okay.
And so just want to encourage everybody who views this to look for it. Culture Connects Us.
Culture Connects Us documentary will be showing a trailer shortly after this interview. I'm very excited for you.
Thank you.
I support you wholeheartedly. Thank you so much for being on the show with us today, Gaylon. Your presence is felt and appreciated. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Absolutely.
I appreciate you.
Absolutely. Our pleasure.
Yeah, and I want to look for the show on Phoenix. When's this Phoenix show coming out?
The Phoenix show. It's always a Phoenix show. Every day is a Phoenix show. But I will keep you posted.
Please.
Yes, we kind of run in the same kind of frequency, kind of wavelengths. We're doing the same kind of vibe. So I see you.
Nice. Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you so much for being here. HHREC Phoenix Rose, sending you all love, light, and healing strength. Ciao.
At this moment in time, we are facing the sobering reality that we are a nation divided. And for those who are asking, what can I do? How can I make a difference? Seek to hear. Commit to setting aside what you think you know and strive to truly understand. Listen.
Like a